Welcome back to the Djellab channel, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you guys are doing really well, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening and watching on Spotify. Thank you so much for joining us today on this lovely Friday. We are here, of course, at the Three Lanterns, just off of Leicester Square in Chinatown. If you guys are ever in London, make sure you pop in here and check it out. I know next week is the marathon. People will be running not too far from here, so make sure you check it out. Joining me today, two fantastic specimens of human beings. Ash, welcome back. How are you doing?
Very good, Zach. Very, very glad you invited me back. Last time must have been at a decent standard.
You were, yeah, you were indeed. And then Henry Hill, of course, back again.
La remontada. I have returned. The comeback.
Unlike Real Madrid, though. Unlike Real Madrid, who maybe we'll get onto in a little bit. But guys, of course, I need to talk about, before we get into today's video, the sponsor of today's video, which is none other than, as I said last week, YouTube royalty, NordVPN. Now, NordVPN is something that football fans can really get the most out of at home. Henry Hill has just come back from travelling the lands of Australia. You used it as well, didn't you, mate?
I used it in Australia. I used it in Asia when I was there last year, in Japan and Korea. For watching games in the UK where they don't have the coverage out there, it's honestly perfect.
It really is.
You can switch into the UK. You can get the coverage there. I watched the League Cup final out in Australia at some silly hour in the morning, but genuinely thanks to NordVPN, I was able to do it.
No,
great.
They are, of course, fantastic. And if you're here in the UK, of course, you can't watch 3 p.m. kickoffs. But using NordVPN, you can change your location to somewhere that does have the 3 p.m. kickoffs available and watch them using that. Now, along with those great features that allow you to watch the football, NordVPN also allows you to stay safe whilst using the internet on whatever device, be it your laptop, your iPad, your iPhone, your Android phone, whatever it might be. NordVPN can keep you safe. Now, along with being super easy to use, you can connect with just one click or with zero if you enable the auto connect feature. It can allow you to change your location easily to 118 different locations. To grab our huge discount off your NordVPN plan, you can go to nordvpn.com/Djellab and get 4 months off your 2-year plan. And with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee, you can give it a try and you'll always have that option there if needed. Get down in the link below and use that link, and I will greatly appreciate it. As I said before and in the other videos, this basically makes doing the podcast so much easier and so much more enjoyable for you guys at home. So thank you to NordVPN. We'll see them as well next week. But guys, today's video, I spoke about flops online. They're always an interesting topic, I guess. Flops every single season are something that people want to talk about. So I put a tweet out saying, who do you think has been the flops of the season? We'll discuss them on the podcast and see whether we agree or disagree. It can be signings or players who have dropped off this season. So that is what today's video is going to be about. However, before we get into that, we've probably got to talk a little bit about the Champions League and the European competitions that are going on at the moment. Ash, you are an Arsenal fan.
I am.
Yesterday was a big game for you against Real Madrid. Los Blancos, royalty of football, won the Champions League over 15 times or more.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly. How did it feel?
Yeah, I can't overstate how big of a game, how big of a result that is. When you look back at Arsenal results in the history, that's got to be right up there. We were quite pleased to have beaten them before 1-0, let alone go there, smash them at home and grab a 2-1 win away at the Bernabeu. It's just actually surreal. And to be honest, I think all the praise has got to go to Arteta. I think it's what he's done to the football club. I think it's quite easy to get lost in the, we haven't won the Premier League argument constantly. But, we were failing in the Europa League when he took over. Now we're beating Real Madrid. The game was insane. Fair play to Saka, missing a penalty like that, coming back. He's probably the expert now at missing a penalty and then coming back in his career and just kicking on.
The finish is so nice.
Finish was unbelievable.
Wow.
Martinelli, superb composure as well in the dying moments. I can't quite believe that we've just beaten Real Madrid, and it just makes me think that we're going to win the Champions League. I'm getting too carried away, but it's a real night.
That PSG though, now it's PSG in the semi-finals. They look, obviously they did Liverpool. They look, I think, a different team now compared to when you faced them earlier in the season and beat them. Yeah. Obviously you got Kvaratskhelia now. They actually will have Dembele, you assume, playing this game too. You see them play the likes of Villa, and to be honest, at times, especially in that first game. Second game, actually, Villa did very, very well. But in that first game, when they can just rip apart teams. And
I will say, though, with Arsenal, they never are dominated by teams.
Yeah.
It's very rare that you see them actually sort of played off the park or exposed horrifically at the back. It might happen the odd game of the season. If you look what they did across 2 legs against a Madrid front line featuring Mbappe and Vinicius, the only goal they scored, Real Madrid, was from an error from Saliba getting caught out.
Yeah.
They essentially nullified that attack in what was one of the most professional 2-legged Champions League Cup performances I've seen in a long time. Again, as you said, huge credit to Mikel Arteta. Yes, the PSG attack going forward is frightening. Desiree Doué, who we were talking about on Continental Club for so many years when he was at Rennes. I'm so happy to see him be even better than I thought he was going to be. I obviously love Kvaratskhelia. If there's any team to kind of shut up shop against them, it's Inter Milan or Arsenal. What I love about this, the 2 semi-finals, is you have 2 well-coached. I mean, they're all well-coached, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But like Barcelona and PSG have like the attacking flair, and I think you can say Arsenal and Inter have the kind of defensive security running through the side. And I think that makes it a really interesting balance. I think, not to get ahead of ourselves on this conversation, you could make an argument for all 4 teams in the semi-finals winning the Champions League this year. And I don't think you could be like, that's definitely not happening. You can see there's a scenario where all 4 win it, and it's like, fair enough.
And actually, you know what I will say as well? I don't mind, like, as a Chelsea London fan, I'd be like, oh, of course you don't want Arsenal to win the Champions League. But actually, as a football fan, any of those 4 winning the Champions League, I'd be quite like happy about, or like I would enjoy. Even if it is like if Inter finally got it under obviously Inzaghi, that would be incredible. If Barca under Flick and this attacking like star is incredible. Even PSG under Luis Enrique like finally lifting that trophy. And then,
the year after losing
Arteta.
Mbappe, if they go and win it, the year after Mbappe leaves to Real Madrid, that is one of the most amusing stories in football history, I think.
It wouldn't be too bad. It wouldn't be too bad, that's for sure.
Anyway, bring on PSG. I think we can have them. Honestly. I think we give Liverpool a good game. They beat Liverpool. I think we give Aston Villa, better than a good game. Aston Villa had a good second game against them, and I think that's the standout point, isn't it? Really, we just shut up Real Madrid, who the same Real Madrid front line who just thrashed Manchester City, and that's still Manchester City is still Manchester City. I'm full of confidence right now, and bring on PSG.
Okay then, fellas, let's get on to the video and talking about flops. I want to start off with Joao Felix. He's mentioned by a bunch of different people, but right first here, we've got Dara Dawson, saying Joao Felix. He's got a couple of other suggestions that we may go through as well. Someone who, it feels like for the last, 3-4 seasons now, Felix's career has come to a standstill.
Yeah.
He got his move this summer to Chelsea. Obviously, he had his move to Chelsea a couple of seasons ago on loan for 6 months, a very expensive loan move. It didn't quite work out at Chelsea at the time. He then obviously moves this summer for what I think was around 50 million quid. So a decent chunk of change to get his services. And after 4 months, ends up going on loan to AC Milan. Goes to AC Milan. Things haven't really got much better whilst in Italy, have they, Henry? What do we make of the Joao Felix conundrum?
Yeah.
Because it is a bit of a conundrum, because there is a player there.
Yeah,
you watch Joao Felix and you can see that there is something there and a talent there.
Yeah,
but getting him to do that is no question.
You're so right. And I don't... is this Agent Mendes? I'm not sure. I think
Is
maybe
Agent Mendes.
I just think he's being really badly advised. Don't get me wrong, he did look good in that first spell he had at Chelsea after the red card. Yeah. Which, even that game, he was playing quite well until that happened.
Was it Fulham, his first game? It was you, wasn't it?
Yeah, I can't remember that. But yeah, to go to AC Milan at this point, I mean, AC Milan have been in turmoil this season. Zlatan, what is his role at the club? No one really knows. Bear in mind, they had Pioli, they had Maldini, they win the league, and then they basically move those 2 guys on because they think they're going on to bigger, better things. And it hasn't. It's gone horribly wrong.
Yeah.
Conceição has done okay. Watts Leao's featured in that squad. Abraham starting up front, only scored a few goals this season. Whilst Inter kicking on like AC Milan have been left behind in a season where they really should have been getting top 4, given that Juve can barely win. It's basically Napoli, a very defensive Napoli, Atalanta. There is a spot there in the top 4, which AC Milan, you really would expect them to grab with the money they've spent. He's gone there, and sure enough, he's joined like a bit of a firestorm at Milan. And lo and behold, he's not been able to play his best football because it's just a slightly negative atmosphere at San Siro, the red side of it anyway at the moment. So yeah, I just think he's been badly advised every step of the way. A lot of the Italian press have been on at him for sort of looking nice in moments, but not really making much of a difference. I don't know. I feel sorry for him. I really do feel sorry for him because he was played chronically out. Well, Simeone, that was never like the right fit for him stylistically.
He had 1 or 2 seasons where it was a good season.
Yeah.
He won the league, but
exactly. Not quite the right fit at Atletico. Maybe if he joined Chelsea after that loan spell, I think it was a different story. Yeah. That didn't happen. Joined Chelsea at a time where they had a bunch of players. Look at Dewsbury. Dewsbury Hall's looked good recently against Legia Warsaw, but can't get a minute otherwise. Yeah. Point being, too much competition in that Chelsea side. He's gone to AC Milan now where there's a problem. I was reading today that Benfica might come back in for him. And actually, you look at it and think, that's probably the best move. Go back to Portugal. Go back to where you made your name. There's no shame in playing for Benfica. It's not like a failure to go back to one of Europe's great sides, in my opinion. Yeah, he'll earn less money. Yeah, he'll sort of disappear, but he'll still be in the Champions League. Yeah. He'll be happy again. I think that's what you just want to see. You want to see a happy footballer playing well. He's saying he wants to stay at AC Milan. I don't think it's going to happen.
No, because Chelsea spent £50 million on him, didn't they, Ash? So how do you feel about that move in general? And really, I think Chelsea would be lucky to get 25, 30?
Yeah, I mean, because that's from the player's perspective. And I didn't really see that side before, or maybe I was ignoring it, because I think the blunt point of view for Felix is, mate, you played in about, 3 of Europe's top 5 leagues now. Yep. What one's going to suit you? And you can't really see that. But then again, I don't think Atletico Madrid was the right move in the first place. However, from the Chelsea perspective, it's an embarrassing bit of recruitment. And I'm sorry, Zach, but I was thinking about it. Can you actually name a club that spent £50 million on a player and then loan them out halfway through the season?
I'd be
Has that happened before? I don't actually think it has. And I think Chelsea's recruitment is causing them a bunch of issues going forward that you kind of can ignore in the moment of signing a player in the limelight of, we got a new player, we spent all this money. Actually, there's so many issues that spiral down from that when you just buy so many players. And Felix was never going to fit into the team, was he? And for Felix to work, like you pointed out, Henry, as well, he needs to be given game time. And he also, am I right in saying maybe the pressure needs to be off a little bit? Yeah. Where is he going to fit into that Chelsea team when you've got Cole Palmer? Because is he a winger? Is he an out-and-out winger? I don't think so. So
he's a second striker. He's a second striker, really.
And do you fit that in when you've got Cole Palmer?
That's what I mean. It's either him or Palmer.
And then where's Nkunku going? So it just doesn't. I'm sure we get onto him, but that causes another issue for Felix. I think, unless I do a little bit more thinking about it, I think that Joao Felix could go down as the worst signing this season in the Premier League. If you're gonna loan him out 6 months later, I'm sorry, and you're gonna spend 50 million on him. I think it's dreadful.
It's a lot of money to spend. It is a lot of money to spend on a player who I just don't quite understand what the thinking was. I think because obviously I do agree with Henry that when he first that 6-month loan, he did look okay. He looked okay. Had nice moments. There were definitely he's definitely an enjoyable player to watch. He's a bit more of a flair player. And a couple of seasons ago, I would have said he screams of a PSG. Screams of maybe a PSG, but I think PSG are now making some really smart moves, and this is actually something they'd stay they would stay away from. And so I have no idea what his future will be. I mean, because essentially at the start of the season, what worked was Chelsea had enough minutes available to have him kind of just be the B team guy, right? And he'd come off the bench every now and again when needed. Maybe if there was a game where they wanted to rest Palmer, that could happen. Then obviously Chelsea fly through the Europa League, Conference League, don't have those minutes available for a good 3 months or so. And Felix goes, well, when am I going to get a game then? Yeah. Which just makes it understandable that he probably wanted to look elsewhere to play football.
If he was truly honest with himself, if he wants to make it in a Big 5 league, he has to go to a B tier team in one of these divisions. He has to go to an Atalanta, a Monaco, even
screams Monaco,
even Villa or something like that. I would say
Villa were after him, right? Villa were looking at him originally. There was they were the ones that were very close to trying to get him.
Go to a team where the limelight's slightly off you. I'm not saying that, and there's no shame in playing for any of these teams, even Marseille if they get Champions League. Yeah. Go to a team where you can be a big man in a smaller side and you can stand out and show your abilities. If it's Benfica again, great. But he has to be honest with himself. Take a pay cut. get a move to where you can and show what you can do. Like a lot of players have been resurrected at clubs like Lille recently. Why not just go and enjoy yourself, play football? Look at what Sharda Ketelara did, leaving AC Milan, going to Atalanta, now one of the most exciting players. Lookman going to Atalanta, now one of the most exciting players.
I wonder if Atalanta will have a little look.
There are places for players like Felix to go. He just needs to be honest with himself and choose the right project for once.
It's hard to see which club takes him though, because I just don't know like how many people are going to fall for this trap again.
But also that take him in a way that, like, to buy him, Chelsea aren't going to be wanting to let him go for any less than what, 35, 40 if they can get that. Yeah. But that's not going to happen. That'd be mad if a club went and spent that. I'd think anyway. I mean, he's still 25. Like, there's the idea that, like, okay, he has it. We know what Felix can do. Like, we know there's an ability there that he could become an £80 million player, and you think, what a snip you've got him for.
If Leverkusen sold Wirtz for 100 million,
yeah,
you could spend 40 of that on Felix.
Yeah.
30, 40 of that on Felix. I'm not saying it's like for like anyway, but he's still pretty good.
I wonder, was Asensio a loan or is it a permanent?
It's on loan.
Yeah.
But is it going to be a permanent?
I think Champions League football depending next season, I imagine.
I wonder if Villa maybe get tempted in again, but we'll see. But yeah, I think that is probably an agree from all of us so far for Joao Felix. Great suggestion then. As I said, it was suggested a bunch of different times by a bunch of different people. I want to jump to as well, mainly because one, it's a Fulham player, and I think it's also a friend of Ash's who suggested it, Joe Southern. And I want to see Henry's thoughts. Unfortunately, Emile Smith Rowe just hasn't hit the heights we expected him to at Fulham. Willing to give him some more game time, though. There's clearly a player there. Is he taking the mick a little bit, do you think there, Ash? Or, knowing Joe, or do you think he's honest about that?
I think he's honest, because I think he was expecting some big things as well. Like you mentioned he was a Fulham fan, so just to clarify, like he did, you know, I feel like he was expecting some big things as well, and for him, yeah, he was really excited to start with. He was excited with the
Went off like a rocket.
He did.
Went off like a rocket.
Yeah, he was just underwhelmed. I feel, and I don't know, because it's
What's
quite
his numbers this year?
Well,
Emile Smith Rowe. I can find that.
It's not. No, it's fine. It's not too. It's not too high, is it? But I don't think he's ever been like, you know, top. And in my head as well, I think I need to. I'm excited to see your point of view, because I've got my Arsenal cap on, and I'm kind of like always trying to apologise for Smith Rowe. But this is his first full season in about 3 years as well. Yeah. I think people need to understand that. That's my only argument against it. At the same time as well, like you've got a lot of already established players in that attack too, and it's, you know, might be quite hard for him to stand out. But yeah, I'm excited to see. 5
goals, 2 assists in the Prem so far this season. Yeah. Doesn't start every game now, does he, Henry?
No, I did say he was going to be signing of the year.
Is he still?
And for a few months, I really did stand by that. Yeah,
he went off like a rocket.
He's in all my draft teams in FPL, and he's been bloody crap since January. So just like but I can't bring myself to get rid of him. I still think there's a really great player there, and you're so right, Ash. I don't think the fee we paid for him is that mental. It's like 34 million pounds. It's not as if
your record fee though, right?
It's a record fee, but it's not as if we've spent 50 million pounds on Smith Rowe. He is young. I hope that Silva stays for another year to get more out of him. I think it has been tricky. I wish he'd stepped up a bit more. Like Iwobi stayed a bit consistent. I think it's worrying that we're bringing back Willian and he's getting more minutes at the moment. When Willian, you know, there's a reason he was at Olympiacos and left there to come back to Fulham. Love the player, but you know, he's dropped off a bit. And in this moment, we've been relying on basically Muniz getting back up to full speed again. Smith Rowe, he's just looked tired. I just don't think he's got the fitness for a whole season. That's the main thing. He just looks really exhausted, and which is a shame, because maybe we just need another bit of competition in that space to push him on. I think get someone else to challenge him, because at least Smith Rowe can play on the left and he can play through the middle. There's options there to fit him into the side. He's not a completely sort of pigeonholed player, which is nice. When he's on form, he's great. But yeah, I think he's just run out of steam post-January, which is a bit worrying. But as you say, Ash, he's not played a load of football the last few years. Let's give him another season to see how he goes. He's not a flop. I don't think you can call a 30 million...
I don't think I'd call him a flop either.
Yeah.
I think flop... I wouldn't say he's... What would be the opposite of a flop?
If Fulham had a dreadful campaign, then maybe I'd agree with it.
Yeah.
But we haven't. We're losing to Bournemouth sucks, but we're still there and thereabouts in the hunt for Conference League football,
Yeah.
which is as good as you can hope for as a Fulham fan.
No, definitely. I always go back to what you probably said about a year ago now, Henry, when you spoke about Fulham and you were like, we're not getting relegated, but we're not doing anything too much more than that. And you were like, oh, that's not so great. And actually, this season's kind of gone maybe a little bit above expectation for Fulham. I think, I wouldn't put him down as a flop. I wouldn't say he's necessarily been the best successful transfer in the season. He started really, really well in the year. And I think that can sometimes mislead you with a player where when they go and start so well for really like 2-3 months, like Emile Smith Rowe did, you're thinking, oh my goodness, like what a steal we've got. And it sets he goes above your expectation so quickly, then sets your expectation up here for him, just for him to then maybe kind of go back down to a little bit more of normality. But definitely not a flop for me.
I also think if you're a flop, you've got to have flopped from somewhere. Like,
true.
What was the standard when
yeah.
you've been injured for 2 seasons?
Yeah, very true.
That's not always the case because, you could sign a player for £80 million and then if you do badly, I suppose you're a flop. But like Smith Rowe hasn't been able to set a standard for the last 2 seasons. So, yeah, I don't think he's a flop, but maybe a little bit underwhelming.
No, I think that's a really good point, actually. Because, what was the expectation when he first joined?
Yeah,
that
what
he
is
was going to be unbelievable.
Yes.
I think that would be
Plenty more flopping players this season.
Exactly, yeah. Unless you were Henry Hill and had him as your transfer of the season.
Well, maybe
But that was
you've
just
done it
like,
for him.
that was just, that's just your heart there, Henry.
Yeah.
Letting your heart speak.
Yeah, very sad.
Let's go to an Arsenal player then, because he was mentioned a few times. One here from Just John, another one from Arsenal Domination. Odegaard.
Yes.
Odegaard. And obviously, when I put this tweet out, I was saying it doesn't just have to be players who have joined this summer or been transferred this summer. And I think this is kind of where the Odegaard name has come from. In brackets here, the Domination guys said, Arsenal player of the season in 22-23 and 23-24. But obviously this year it doesn't look like it will be him. He's then put, he'll bounce back next season. Odegaard, again, because of his expectation being one of the best players in the league, I think it is safe to say he's not maybe been to that standard so far this campaign. He also has had to deal with no Saka for a long, long time, which makes any player around him much, much better. Yeah. He's had to deal with Arsenal not having a striker, basically, for the entirety of the season, and done a decent job with Kai Havertz there. I think there's even arguments to say that the left wing has had issues, and only Martinelli now is coming back to form. And so I do think when you are the only player there that can be creative, that has to try and find the goal and stuff, it does become quite difficult to do that. And especially without someone like Bukayo Saka there on the right wing, it makes your job so much more tougher because everyone's going, well, there's no Saka, we just need a man mark you, Odegaard, and no one get the ball.
The argument that Odegaard is a flop is ridiculous in my opinion. I just think, look, you're going to look back at his career, you're going to notice a little bit of a purple patch. You're going to call him a flop for that season. Oh, and it's also the season he doesn't have a striker in front of him. Yeah. He doesn't have Saka next to him. Maybe you could argue as well, if Saka's not there, he almost needs to step up a little bit.
Yeah, there is a good point with that.
But, I mean, you're kind of... I understand. I'm getting kind of, I've just said that you need to flop from somewhere to be a flop. And I suppose he has flopped from being too good over the last 2 seasons. But I just think, like... He's been like, don't damage him just because he's been so good. And also, I mean, just to clarify, last season 23 goals and assists. Season before 22 goals and assists, and this season it's on 13. 13 goals and assists is still just as good as Kevin De Bruyne this season. And I know De Bruyne isn't having the best of seasons either, but are you going to call him a flop after everything? And I just think Odegaard has been so important for us.
It's the goals more specifically, I think. Because Odegaard used to come up with so many goals. Yes. So many game-winning goals, I thought, as well. Those finishes just outside the box. Yeah, a little bit De Bruyne-esque, actually, how De Bruyne would find that curve into that corner. This year, is he on 2 goals? Is it 2 goals?
No. I think it's a little bit. Yeah, 5 goals. 5 goals. Yeah.
Previously, he was hitting double figures.
Okay, look. Bear in mind, I think over the course of the whole season, Arsenal are, as the table shows, comfortably the second best team, and that transpires in the Champions League, where they've been so impressive as well. Odegaard has played his part in that Champions League run as well. Against Real Madrid, we saw another really composed performance in the midfield. It is really hard when your front line is changing on a weekly basis. Yeah, really hard. It's difficult even when your fullbacks are changing on a weekly basis, which has been the case with Arsenal a lot of the season. If you consider the connections, the triangles, we talked about it last week with Timber, how impressive it is replacing White in that system there. a lot of these, the great teams, when they're fielding their starting 11 every week, that's when you see something pretty exceptional happen. They haven't had that luxury this season, Arsenal. And yeah, to pin the blame on Odegaard, let's never forget, this was a £35 million signing.
Bargain.
Who has been unbelievable. And if they do something in the Champions League, no one's going to remember that he had a bit of an off-season.
Yeah.
If they win the Champions League and come second in the Premier League, that's a great season.
But they will remember his 3 goals and 2 assists in the Champions League this season as well.
Yeah.
Which is so important as well. Yeah, I just think, I'm sure Dennis Bergkamp had an off year. I don't know his stats.
Plus, he works hard for the team as well. Like,
Exactly.
I remember, because he's also been injured. He was out injured for a month or a half, 2 months. And I remember his first game back was Chelsea at the Bridge, and watching him was like a delight. He gets that assist where he picks up the ball on the outside of the box, puts it to the back post. I think Martin taps it in. It was outrageous, and only him and maybe Saka, one of the 2 players for Arsenal that can do that ball, and he's just outrageous with that ability.
Him and De Bruyne, there's similarities there in that they must be a manager's dream. In that these are like superstar players that do not give off superstar arrogance on the pitch. They really do feel like 2 players that work relentlessly for their side. Players Tribune read articles with Odegaard. I think he's an ultimate professional.
Is he the captain?
He's
the club captain, isn't he?
As well. I think, fantastic. Give him a strong forward line. Energise the attack next season. There's no way De Bruyne puts up all these numbers if he doesn't have Aguero and Haaland basically forever in front of him.
Exactly. Yeah, if he didn't have Haaland at the back stick and he's curling those beautiful crosses in there, and Odegaard's not the freest player either. Like, it's not like he's just been. I think you can compare him to Ozil as well, and how Ozil came from Madrid, Odegaard came from Madrid, and Ozil was much more of a star when Ozil came to Arsenal, but the amount of times that I was comparing their numbers, and at the moment now, Odegaard's kind of had the same numbers as Ozil did in his entire time at Arsenal as well, in terms of goals and output. And I might be a little bit off of that, but it's not far off it. And Ozil was afforded so much, grace in his full, and a new contract when he was going into his 30s as well. And I feel like it took a lot longer to call him a flop at Arsenal. And now all of a sudden, Odegaard hasn't smashed in 15 goals this season and he's a flop. I think that's ridiculous, especially, I think the point that stands above it all, the tactical system, the thing that he was also so important in making sure happened, in Saka being so good, in that triangle working so well, hasn't been there for him this season. When you just expect him to be exactly the same. I think that's ridiculous in that. So I don't think he's a flop.
I think I wouldn't have him as a flop. I would just say he's maybe had a slightly down year on his own incredible standards.
Yes, because he's been incredible.
Let's go to Man United then, because there's a couple of players to talk about here. I know, Ash, you put down here Rasmus Højlund. Obviously, he has 3 Premier League goals.
I did.
Not very good. We've also got someone say basically the whole Man United team except Fernandes, Bruno, which I think maybe is a little bit harsh. I'd also say Ahmed's had a pretty good year now that he's injured. I also want to talk about Onana.
Yes.
Because, obviously, playing in goal for Manchester United now, into his second season.
Because your thumbnail demands it.
Because thumbnail demands it. But also, we do need to have a conversation for him, because he was dropped recently by Ruben Amorim. Obviously, the goalkeeper whose name didn't have the best game either against Newcastle, losing 4-1 in the end. 4-1 in the end. Onana in the Lyon match puts out those messages, obviously, with Nemanja Matic about him being able to win trophies after Matic called him bad, and then obviously he lets in 2 really bad goals, especially that the first one.
I think the second one.
I can kind of see,
harsh,
but it's not great. It's still not like great goalkeeping.
It was 12
either.
yards, absolutely pelted at him, and it's just sort of hit him. I'm a bit more sympathetic.
Sure,
to
the first one. But the issue, right? These aren't the only mistakes he's made. There are an absolute catalogue to go with him. And the thing is with Onana is over the years of his goalkeeping career, from Ajax to Inter to now obviously Manchester United, he's always had these elements. There have always been stinkers. You can go back through compilations where he's letting a goal, I'm pretty sure, at Ajax because someone passed the ball back to him and he missed the ball. He even had it at Inter, albeit obviously he was at Inter for a lot less time. However, his ball-playing ability made up for that in so many different ways. He would pull off the most incredible saves at times. At Manchester United, when you are not using his ball-playing ability, I think you have basically a bog-standard goalkeeper there. And for someone that you paid 50 million pounds, I think it was, for his services, it makes it very questionable. And at least last year, to be fair, at the start of the season, he started the season very, very well. He's one of Man United's best players, but he is a massive, massive confidence player, and his confidence is on the floor. And if you're a goalkeeper in particular, we spoke about a bunch this season with Sanchez, but confidence for a goalkeeper is huge, and I think he has zero at the moment.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. If he was my goalkeeper, he would make me nervous. I'm trying to. Yeah, I think that is my honest opinion. I wouldn't be too sure, and I wouldn't be as sure as I am with David Raya in goal or anything like that. But I just feel like when you look at his career, I think you pointed out something pretty obvious there as well. I just don't think Onana is the problem at Manchester United, and I don't think he is the one that you need to label as a flop. This is a guy that Ajax managed to get to a Champions League semi-final with him in goal. Inter Milan managed to get to a Champions League final with him in goal. Manchester United,
and he looks really good in these games as well.
Yeah, he is a player that has an error in him, and I can't lie, he makes me nervous, and I wouldn't want him to be my goalkeeper. But I do not think that he is the problem that you need to focus on. They could go and get a better goalkeeper. I just don't. I don't know what they would do. They would still face, the shots that they're facing, and it's not like he's letting in these kind of goals every single week. And this is the kind of goalkeeper that he has warranted the praise. I think sometimes he's been a little bit too overhyped, but the fact that maybe Man United fans are moaning about him now, I just feel like, did you watch him in the first place? Like, did you actually see this guy before? Because well,
2 seasons ago, it was him and Mike Maignan that were the two. Like, if you're going to get a goalkeeper and you're going to spend lots of money, it's either one of those two. Mike Maignan, I think, was always quoted a bit more, like 70 million or something, which is a lot of money to spend. And then Onana was the 50 million, and that's where what's her face? Obviously, Inter happily take that money to the bank, go and get Jan Sommer, who's obviously been unreal as well, And Man United have been left with Onana. I do agree. I do think there are a lot of other problems at Manchester United.
I wouldn't fix him first.
But I don't think
he's not the guy, is he? But I feel like you can get away with a lot with a shoddy goalkeeper. Honestly, I feel like you can.
But the issue there, what I've seen this season, is he has made so many errors.
Yeah, high profile. His performance in the Champions League.
Last season.
Last season. That was unacceptable. Then It is tricky. I actually make a really great point about various Champions League runs and him playing in good teams. But I sort of remember he left Senegal at the World Cup because he didn't agree. Not Senegal, sorry, Cameroon. Because he didn't agree with the style of play. It's that shows a dichotomy in the guy of
can you adapt?
Yeah. So he's got to step up. One of my biggest icks is people that write off a goalkeeper because they don't think they're very good with their feet. And I'm like, well, you've got to be a good shot stopper first and foremost.
Most important.
And actually, when you watch Onana, more often than not, he is a good shot stopper. In the way that I don't see with Robert Sanchez. I think Onana has the ability to pull off some spectacular saves, but the errors are just too glaring from time to time. That said, again, it is just a negative atmosphere at Manchester United, and it can't be easy turning up every day being like, oh God, spotlight again, and everyone's like, well, that's the pressure at Manchester United. Well, I'm sorry, it's been going on for too long. Do you know what I mean? You can't just assume that everyone's going to be like Bruno and just step up and be the guy. And I think for a goalkeeper, which is a real confidence position, just look at De Gea now. He's probably on to be named Serie A goalkeeper of the year.
That was going to be my point. Is essentially they got rid of De Gea for Onana. Right, and whilst De Gea has definitely had high-profile mistakes in his career,
he had
for
those
sure.
Times,
De Gea, his shot-stopping ability was ridiculous. It was the issue of the ball at his feet that every time that came into it was De Gea, and that was the reason they wanted to move him on. And the side that I find really difficult with Onana is we're not seeing the ball at his feet. Yeah. At least if Onana was able to have the ball at his feet and we're seeing this beautiful long ball distribution, being able to play quick one those where he joins into the defence essentially to make a back four if one of the fullbacks go forward, whatever it might be. If we were seeing this, then you can say, well, look how crucial he is to the system. Look, you may not be able to score goals because of him. We don't see that. We never see this. And because Man United don't want to play that way at times, we don't see that. And so essentially, you've just got someone who isn't as good as a shot stopper as De Gea in goal, and you're not even using his best ability, which is the ball at his feet.
Sorry to cut you off. I just think Edison kind of epitomizes, like he sums up what I'm trying to say here as well. Like, Edison is a great goalkeeper, and I'm not trying to say he isn't, but my word of, people been saying that he's not as good as, he's not as good as Alisson, he's not the best in the Premier League. Like, I don't think he's ever been called the best in the Premier League. I feel a bit sorry for him because of that. But Man City have still been able to win 6 Premier Leagues or 5 Premier Leagues with him in goal.
And he's had 4 assists this season.
Yeah, I just think you can get it. I just feel like you can get away with a goalkeeper that's not. I feel like David Raya was massive for us, but I love Bernd Leno.
Leno's the dream.
Yeah, I really liked him. And also I loved Aaron Ramsdale. And Arteta saw something that we all didn't. But it's just
I don't know.
Nowadays anyway. But
relegated
yeah,
again,
for me, like Onana's not the one you should be worrying about. I don't think so. Apart from when he's trying to make a save. But I just.
But that's the most crucial thing, right? Like, essentially, as much as having ball playing goalkeepers is amazing, if they're not doing the number one job, which is saving the ball from going in the net, then they're not worth it.
What happens when you get someone that can save every shot? What happens then? Like,
that was De Gea, right? That was De Gea,
yeah, and
right.
you're still not performing up to the standards that you
true.
wanted to be at. So what happens then? Like, I feel like, I know it sounds a little bit silly because a goalkeeper is important, but fix the more important things first. Like, fix your ability to actually break down teams and fix your ability to go and win matches all by yourself, to the point that it doesn't matter if your goalkeeper does make a mistake every now and then because you're so good.
And would you say that is where Højlund comes into it?
Yeah, that's why I suggested him. I just think, I do feel a little bit sorry for him, but he has been a humongous flop for Manchester United. When he actually went to Manchester United, I don't think he should have ever gone there. I think that was a silly mistake from him because, like, it was between Højlund and Harry Kane. So they had a hole up front, and Højlund has to all of a sudden perform to the standards of a guy's name that sounds like him, and he has to be the next Haaland. He has to be the red side of Manchester's Haaland.
Yeah, Ash, Højlund is £50 million cheaper than Harry Kane and about a third of the wage price, and 8 years younger. Like, there is logic for going to Højlund. The problem is what United have done again is they've seen a player who's had like one good season at the top level.
6 months.
And he had
actually.
like 11 goals, 11 goals for Atalanta. Again, an unbelievably well-coached team in a nice atmosphere, progressive team. And they've gone, that's the man. We need, because the whole of Europe's going to go for this guy, so we just need to get him first. Don't get me wrong. Like, Euro actually looks like I think he will be a good signing down the track. But time and time again, you see them splash money on someone who's had a good season because they feel like they need to almost prove themselves and get ahead of the Europe's best. Make that signing. I just think their recruitment model needs to go. They need to really look inwards. And
I actually didn't mind Højlund's signing.
I don't think it's
a lot. I think a lot of money. Though it was like 70 million, wasn't it? Which is a lot of money to put on someone who's had one good season,
like Xerxes.
And at least, like Xerxes. And at least, what I will say, he was a young guy who, worst comes to worst, they can move on and get something back. It wasn't like when they signed Ronaldo, right, and gave him this ridiculous wage, and he was 34 or whatever it was, like that. Again, I don't know. Some people might
Ronaldo
argue,
scored goals.
Yeah, it's true. It is true. But what was silly was to think, well, when he joined, he was 18. Like, an 18-year-old is going to lead the line for Manchester United. Yeah,
I think he's a little bit older, but like, point being, he had no experience. Exactly. He might as well have been 18.
Like, you should have, like, there had to be another person there for the option. Like, what we've been able to see with a lot of Manchester United players, and we spoke about Onana, but this could go down to nearly all of them really that have signed in the last 3 years. When the club hasn't been doing well, which it hasn't for the last couple of seasons, and the fan base, and which is huge, and the online media circus around them as well, that once their confidence goes, my God, you've barely got a player on that pitch. And when Højlund's confidence is gone, it is really tough to watch sometimes. But you were just watching this kid get bullied out there. And at least if they had an older guy, someone there to have an arm around him, to basically, if he's playing badly, put him on the bench, put this other guy up there. They've not had that at all. He's had to be on the front of everything. I
really think United need to go out and get a kind of Cavani figure again. Get a solid, experienced, experienced front man he's just there, who will just get you like 10, 12 goals a year. Like, we were joking about the Ighalo signing. At least Ighalo sort of did. He was a bit of a lump up front, but he knew what he was doing. Like, I think they need that as an option to replace these young guys, because they've got Xerxes and Højlund, and if those two are struggling, And I think Xerxes now out for the rest of the season with an injury.
But they're about to add, supposedly, they want to try and add like someone like Liam Djellab as well, who's again 22.
So Højlund's pace is one of the main things about him, and he's being asked to basically play with his back to the goal in a very tactical system. Actually, under Ten Hag's system would have made sense. If you think of like when Ten Hag's football was going well and they were just hitting teams in the counter-attack with Rashford, with Højlund. Actually, that's where you look at Højlund and think that's not a bad signing because he is unbelievably quick. But he's not really being giving an opportunity to show that. I think there's a good footballer in there. I don't think he deserves as many pelters as he's getting. Either loan him out to Italy or give him another season and backhammer him and get more money spent. But yeah, I think it's unfair to label him a huge flop because he's so young and it's so negative at United all the time. I
almost think like it's a flop on the club's behalf rather than his behalf as well. Also, the counter-attacking point is great. Nearly all of the Atalanta goals he scored in that season, and I think it was like 13 goals. It was on the break, wasn't it? And he did well to get into the right kind of positions. But when you're not using him like that, and also I feel like you need a kind of striker that knows how to do a bit of everything. You know, he just knows how to score, and maybe that's a little bit too like vague in what you want from a striker because obviously they need to score. But yeah, I just see it as a flop, and I feel like it's going under the radar.
Can I put out a suggestion for them?
Go on.
Go to Osasuna and get Budimir, the Croatian forward, who for the second season in a row is one of the 3 top scorers in La Liga. Yeah. He's a no-thrills front man who will stand there and nod the ball in if you hit it to him. And actually, for Osasuna, you offer them 25, 30 million. I'm telling you, that's the kind of, at this point for United, that's the kind of signing I think they need to make.
I think that'll be all right.
I'm interested to see what happens for next year. Obviously, they're going to bring in a striker, aren't they? That's obvious. And look, if you look at Ruben Amorim's sporting side, like they were creating so many chances every game for Gyökeres, who obviously was, but also the attacking midfielders and also the wing back / wingers were having so many chances every single game. And obviously, whether that quite works out at United remains to be seen. But the system has an ability to have these chances there for them, but right now we're not seeing it. I wonder if maybe next year, if he gets a few more of his guys, one of them will be a striker. If we'll see maybe Højlund improve if he's not had to be the number 1 or the number 9 every single game and doesn't have that same pressure on him. Remains to be seen. Maybe a loan out is arguably a better option as well. But alas, I'm sure we'll end up talking about Manchester United as well in the summer and all their deals. But another, a couple of players here we mentioned as well. There was Garnacho, who obviously had a really good year last year, kind of dropped off this year. I think when you end up going through a club and there are more than 5 names to talk about of them having a drop off, that might actually suggest that the club itself and the tactics or whatever it might be aren't quite working at the moment, rather than saying that every single player there is really bad when they were actually half decent the season before or previously. So yeah, that is Man United and those boys. Another one we're going to talk about is, let's look at Ipswich. Just a couple of players that we need to mention. Obviously, they brought in on loan Godfrey, who obviously was from Atalanta. Then they've also had Jack Clarke as well from Sunderland at the start of the season. Now we spoke about them last episode, and talking about Liam Djellab and how their improvements was more to be expected of these two. Jack Clarke was the best winger in the league, arguably for Sunderland last season. Everyone thought he could make this step up really well. Hasn't quite worked out for him this season. Same with kind of Godfrey. I mean, Godfrey we thought could be that bad of a signing. Hasn't worked out at all.
Well, and Jack Clarke, I mean, almost kind of screams the same thing about Højlund. Like, was that the right move? You know, like you could have stayed with Sunderland. You could have had quite a nice entrance into the Premier League. Well, if they did get promoted anyway, I'm sure he would have helped things. But it was always going to be quite a hard task, and I don't know what the appeal was, because you can tell getting into the Premier League means so much to a player like that. But is it worth it when Ipswich were going to be on such? It was always going to be such an uphill battle for Jack Clarke. I don't think the move was right. To call him a flop, though, I don't know. Is he a flop for not doing too well in a team that hasn't been in the Premier League for over a decade?
And one most likely to get relegated anyway.
I think so, yeah. I mean, when you look at it, it was almost like they were favourites, weren't they, considering Leicester and Southampton's experience? But they almost looked like the better of the teams.
Because I also remember saying at the start of the summer, with a lot of these signings, that, these are signings for if they go down, they're going to be one of the best teams in the Championship and come back up again. Yeah. Right? Like Jack Clarke is one of the best wingers in the Championship, and he'll probably be one of the best wingers in the Championship next season.
Yeah.
That's not bad to me.
I really hope. Well, I think who's looking at him? I think there's a Dutch team. I think like PSV are looking at him or something like that. But I really hope that Ipswich come back up again. I'd like to see. I hope they maintain the core of that squad. It is really hard for them, and it's interesting. We were talking about Højlund making the decision to go to United. You look at McKenna. He had the option to go to Chelsea, and you got to think like if he says yes, then that might be his own.
He did get the option.
Well, I thought he was in the right. I thought he was interviewed.
I think he was interviewed, and they basically said in the end not to go. Maybe that was how it was reported.
But he then signed a new deal at Ipswich and decided to stay on. My point being, he had there was a moment where he could have maybe gone to a bigger
United
team
looked
last
in
year.
as well.
Brighton, and he's not gone, and he's decided to stay at Ipswich. And you're now going. You're probably not going to get another. Like, look at Rob Edwards. Did a great job at Ipswich, and now
sacked.
He'll get a job in the Championship. Don't get me wrong, but. Now seems a long way off getting a chance at the Premier League. So it is tricky for Ipswich. Again, they make a lot of signings, bring in a lot of players, a lot of integration. Just look at the goalkeeper situation. Palmer's now come in after
Muric could have been
a flop
as well, yeah.
So it isn't easy, as we've seen now for the last 2 seasons straight, to be a promoted side. And you can spend all the money in the world. A lot of the signings they made, as you said, are with the future in mind. Yes, you want a bit more from Jack Clarke, but I think it's so unfair to go like. Other than Djellab, none of them have posted incredible numbers.
Yeah.
None of them have posted incredible numbers. So
even Amari Hutchinson started the season really well, and then I guess as it kind of went on, hasn't quite been.
They've dropped the most. I think they've dropped the most points from winning positions this year, Ipswich, which shows. Which again against Chelsea shows like they can do it. It's just tricky.
Defensively, I think sometimes as well is what you see them go through is like they score or they score and they find the pressure really difficult. They find it really, really difficult. It's almost like an acceptance that like, okay, we will concede at some point and we've got to like hope that Liam Djellab finds a way to put it in the back of the net. Like I always wonder how it is for a fan of one of these clubs to see most of these games where game after game after game, it's just like a brutal cycle. And if you do sit there and think, oh, I actually kind of can't wait to get back in the Championship next year and have a bit more enjoyment from it. But I do genuinely think like, if we're looking at this as maybe like a 3-year plan, including this season, they came up, spent a lot of money, but a lot of money on players who mentioned like are good for the Championship. Go back down with the parachute payments, with more money there to spend, bring in some other really good quality players, have a really good season, come up again next year and go for it again. Like they'll be in a better place next time. I wonder if that could work.
That's what happened to Fulham. We came up, got relegated again, came back up again, and have now established ourselves. So, and I think the squad in principle is there. I think they need someone next to O'Shea.
Bournemouth as well. With Eddie. Did they go down again, or am I mentioning that? They went down and then Scott Parker took him over. Parker took him over. It's definitely doable. It's definitely doable. And I think for Ipswich fans, I think
their squad looks the best out of those 3 relegated. So like even if they lose Djellab, like I feel like he is. As long as you keep the bulk of that squad, I think he's replaceable.
Yeah,
and I think they'll be all right.
Without a doubt. You saying that reminded me. He's not actually been suggested, but we do need to maybe quickly mention the £20+ million spent on Oli Skipp for Leicester City. A lot of money to bring him in. I actually don't mind Okoli, the centre-back they brought in. I think he's actually done a decent enough job. Scored his first goal a couple of weeks ago.
My defence of Skipp would be, I don't think anyone expected that to be a good decision. It's not as if everyone said, oh, they've just bought Oli Skipp for 20 million. He's going to be unbelievable. Well, that's unbelievable. I think a lot of people went, why have you done that? You're a cash-strapped side. Why have you spent the money you've got for Dewsbury Hall on someone who's not the same remotely as Dewsbury Hall? Like they went, we'll get Bonanotte on loan, who's been very good.
Yeah, very good.
But yeah, I feel slightly sorry for Oli Skipp. 0 goals, 0 assists, 18 games. It's not great, is it? But he was never worth. I bet Tottenham couldn't believe it. Tottenham could not believe it when they quoted him that much. They went. I think Leicester were desperate to do something.
They were.
At that point in the
market. They didn't have a lot of money to spend. And obviously, everyone kind of knows you're after someone, a midfielder, after losing your most attacking, creative midfielder last season. But I just don't understand where the maths went to go. Let's bring... Because he's basically what's his face? The other Winks 2.0. And Winks is probably better than him anyway. Really, really odd decision. I think that is a huge flop signing. This is where... I kind of made that point at the beginning of the season actually about Liam Djellab, and whilst I think Liam Djellab has been a success, spending maybe more so in Leicester's case, spending so much money on these guys who basically will determine whether you could stay up or not, and spending that on Oli Skipp was just a guaranteed relegation, to be quite honest.
Yes.
Another player I want to mention here, because I think it's really interesting, because I think I have a better idea about him than Liverpool fans do. Jam Reed said Luis Diaz isn't only a flop this season, but he's really bad at football. There's another word that he uses in there, but I won't.
Just wrong.
I won't quote. But Liverpool fans aren't 100% fans of Luis Diaz, from what I sense. Because at times this season, I thought actually Luis Diaz, there was arguments that he's one of the best players in the league at the beginning of the season. He was absolutely flying at times. But it feels like, essentially, if you could ask a Liverpool fan, would you replace him for another left winger, of course, of decent standard, they would probably accept that. I think there's business to be done elsewhere, and I think it won't be at the top of their list to get a left winger in. However, I mean, after now they've got the contract signed by Salah, and looks like Van Dijk's doing it. Like, striker might be the first idea to go to, and left back and right back. But Luis Diaz doesn't seem to get the love that I think he deserves at Liverpool. What do you think, Ash?
He's got 11 Premier League goals.
I know.
I would, I know that's quite a lazy kind of way of me looking at a player, but that ain't bad at all.
No,
and he's got 5 assists too. If Martinelli was doing that for Arsenal, I'm sorry to just throw it back to Arsenal all the time, but I think that's a decent output for a winger. I feel like there's a bit of a consensus in modern day football. As soon as one player scores an astronomical amount of goals, your player has to be doing that or they're a flop.
Yes.
Haaland set the bar too high, and Haaland's also a bit of a problem for Højlund in the fact that once your striker isn't scoring that many goals, it's kind of you're not that good. No, 11 goals for a winger in the Premier League isn't that bad.
And what side of the pitch is most of the ball going through?
Exactly.
It's not his side. It's going through Salah's side.
How many goals did you want him to score?
So what's he meant to do when he gets half the amount of the ball as Salah? Also, don't write off what he's doing off the ball to create space for people like Salah to do what he's doing. People are so narrow-minded about this sometimes. Luis Diaz, don't get me wrong, if a team offers 80 million, which is what I keep seeing that someone's interested in him, if Atletico offered 75 million for him or something like that, PSG, I think you probably would take it. But no, he is a perfectly I never look at him and go, you're not putting in a great performance. Him and Jota do a very good, solid job.
Yeah.
And allow Salah to be who he is. Nunez is much more of a problem than Luis Diaz.
Well, Liverpool fans talk about him at the moment because his contract ends in 2027. So still a couple of years away. But they are talking about him as if giving him an extension. Let me just read some of the comments here about Diaz, which might make it. Maybe it'll make us understand. Maybe it'll make us see what Liverpool fans are seeing. So this person here says that basically he'd like Jamie Gittins to come to Liverpool. He's a joy to watch. He'd be really good in one-on-one situations, unlike Luis Diaz, who he thinks isn't an intelligent footballer. Another person here is actually praising him, and then the replies are, he's scored twice since January. Let's be realistic. It's the first time he's broken 10 in the league. That's a minimum requirement for a starting left wing on a Premier League side. Someone else says it's not only about the goals, though. His performances are shambolic at times. He plays one good game and underperforms for 8 to 9. He's so inconsistent. Not 100% convinced on him, but he is by far from our biggest issue. That's probably quite similar to what we would say. But yeah, that seems to be the.
All right, then get some competition in for him. Then, if that's genuinely how you feel, bring in someone like Gittins. Make them have to battle out for a position, because there is maybe a bit of complacency in that forward line, and that it's picked itself quite a lot.
But also the striker for that forward line, right? Even let's say when it's Jota or Nunez, right? And I've obviously always had my thoughts about Jota that I don't think he's actually as great as people make him out to be. I think he's a great finisher, but I wonder about other things. But if you brought in a number 9 who would occupy defenders, maybe, as you mentioned earlier, Henry, that does open up space for Diaz to get more runs into the box. At times, Diaz has had to play striker for Liverpool this season and done, I think, a pretty good job at it. It seems, this was a great comment here. He's not a guy that scores 25 goals a year like most classic wingers. What?
Well, I also I wanted to butt in, but I stopped myself. But Someone says something like he's only just gone past 10 Premier League goals. I don't, like 10 Premier League. If your winger got 10 Premier League goals, I don't think that's that bad. I think that's all right. Unless I'm like, I think that's pretty strong numbers. Like I don't think he's the problem across that front line.
Especially when everything else we mentioned is given to Salah. Like it's all about how many opportunities can we make for Salah, who's unbelievable.
If my club was about to win the Premier League, I don't think I'd hate any of my wingers.
It's not a Ribery Robin situation.
Yeah.
He is evidently not nearly as good as Salah.
Yeah.
But again, I think a lot of teams in the league would snap your hand off for a winger like Diaz. I don't think he goes missing for 8 games a season. I think that's pretty harsh. But listen, Liverpool fans watch him more than we do.
They do.
I can understand the frustrations to an extent, but I really don't think that he's a flop in any way.
Yeah, completely agree. And he's not like that. He's not a priority to replace. Like you've got to go and get some other signings before you think about Diaz. And then maybe if you got spare money and you think, oh, Jamie Gittins is available for 40, 50 million. Okay, fine. I wouldn't mind that. Okay, let's talk about Spurs. We've got around 10 minutes left of the video, 10 to 15 minutes left. This one comes from Erwin6, and he has said Solanke. Another one just under him as well has suggested Heung-min Son. Solanke.
Let me just look at my notes after he was
Heung-min Son. Solanke. Let's do Solanke
Oh.
first, because I do think we need to have a little word about him, because Solanke, 60 odd million pounds for his services. Henry looks like he's about to cry after what
Is it
he's
Solanke's
seen.
fault that Spurs have lost 17
Before we get
games
into the
this year?
fence, Ash, go on then. Talk about Solanke for me, from the Arsenal fan.
He's making me not go straight into my argument about
No, go
Solanke.
for
But
it.
I'm gonna just pretend that none of that just happened. Right. So when I was thinking about Solanke,
Yeah.
ultimately I've come to I think Dominic Solanke has been a flop this season. Right. I'm just gonna get it out there because I mean he scored 9 Premier League goals. And he's the striker for, Spurs have pretty good attacking numbers.
Yeah.
He's their striker as well. He's also he's off the back of scoring 19 Premier League goals in the Premier League. And my thinking was, Spurs could have done with someone that scored 19 goals in the Premier League this season. They really could have done with that.
Definitely.
And he hasn't done it. And that is why they brought him, because they needed someone that was going to score a lot of Premier League goals. And he's just done that, and now he hasn't. So my thinking is, he's a flop. I also think 60 million isn't cheap whatsoever. Also, I kind of think there's a weird paradox around Dominic Solanke in how Jesse Lingard was thought about a couple of years ago, where you always think he's a youngster, but Dominic Solanke isn't a youngster. He's
27 now.
27.
Yeah.
He's not a youngster. It's not like I feel like you don't need to have this opinion of him. Well, you can have whatever opinion you want, but no, you don't need to think that
He's younger than he is,
It's fine. Give him time. He's going to kick on. No, he's 27 now. And they've just spent £60 million on him. He needs to score now, doesn't he? Obviously, there's plenty more problems at Tottenham Hotspur. There really is. But I don't know. I think he's a flop this season. He hasn't been a flop in his entire career. He's arguably got much better, and fair play to him.
Yeah.
But very few forwards can say they've scored 19 goals in one Premier League season. But he hasn't done that this season.
Go on,
and
Henry.
he's flopped off from there.
How's your thoughts of him?
Just don't think that I think he's just come to Spurs at a unfortunate crossroads. I think when you look at what Richarlison was offering compared to him, I think it's very evident that he is better playing in the central striker position. It doesn't help that Son has very clearly dropped off this season. Doesn't make him a flop, by the way. Doesn't make someone a flop.
Makes this season maybe a flop, not him generally. I think it's this season's Heung-min Son. Can
you do me a favour? Can you see what his expected goals is?
Who?
Solanke.
Yeah.
Because
Solanke is still a £60 million player.
Yeah, but Spurs are crap.
Yeah,
well,
sure, but Spurs spent £60 million on Dominic Solanke.
I understand. Like if he's scoring what he's supposed to be scoring, how do
I agree with you.
Like Spurs spent a lot of money on a striker who scored a lot of goals last season.
Okay, right. So his expected goals, and I know a lot of people roll their eyes at this, is 9.92. So he scored 7. So he scored. So there's like 3 opportunities. Basically, he should have scored 3 more goals. What that says to me, which aligns with what I think about Spurs when I watch them play football, is that he's not been given a plethora of opportunities to put the ball in the back of the net. Okay.
Yeah.
And that comes from the fact that they've been heavily reliant on Kulusevski this season.
Yeah.
Son's had a bit of a tricky time.
Injuries left, right, and centre.
Injuries left, right, and centre. Generally, a very miserable atmosphere around there. Do I think that he was a £60 million striker? No, I don't. I don't think it was that. Do I think that was what Bournemouth. That was that. I mean, ultimately, Bournemouth are in a pretty strong negotiating position, and that's what they extracted out of Spurs, who needed to do something with the Harry Kane money. I don't think anyone says, "Oh, this guy is going to be." I agree. 12
Do you
goals.
not think, no. Do you not think at the start of the season, Dominic Solanke's signing thought that had? We know now, right? We've seen what's happened to Spurs. We'll see probably what does happen to Spurs after the Frankfurt game. But at the start of the season, I think people would have said Dominic Solanke's signing takes Spurs into the Champions League places. People would have put Spurs in the top four, and they are above the relegation zone.
I know, but they don't have any through. Well, I guess they got James Maddison, but James Maddison's been hot and cold.
Maybe it's more on Ange. But this is a guy who, as we said before, classically creates systems that are made for bringing his strikers and other attacking players lots of opportunities to score goals. And maybe the blame does need to be more at Ange than it does have to be at Solanke.
So Solanke does a lot off the ball.
But I do think what we've seen, does so much off the ball. I think he's one of the hardest working strikers in the league. He does so well at that. I completely agree. But Dominic Solanke does also, or the signing of Dominic Solanke, at least for this season, next season it could be different. I do maybe not as harsh as Ash is with it, but I do understand that, like, if someone must be like that, it's a flop.
Okay, it's a lot of money. It's one of those. I think it was maybe the most expensive signing made last year. And yes, Spurs' league position is terrible, but can you ultimately pin that on him? I don't think that he is. I do not think of him as the central problem in this Spurs side. There are so many other positions of concern in that team in the dugout. He's not a flop. The system at Spurs has flopped this season. I don't think Solanke can ultimately shoulder a lot of the blame for that.
Interesting way to put that, and I actually would agree. I think I'd agree more on that.
What do you reckon, Ash?
Well, considering
Considering you're wrong.
Considering my Onana, they're 15th, mate. I'm not being funny. Considering my Onana argument, I can't really come back at what you're saying because I said Onana's not a flop because he's not the biggest problem.
Yeah, true.
It's not like he's missing. Sorry, go on.
No, I do. I don't know. Just you're gonna look back at this Tottenham Hotspur season. They signed him, and all of a sudden they're 15th. I don't think many people are going to look at it in a different angle, are they?
If there were loads of compilations this year of him missing open goals, then I would accept it. But I don't. There's been the odd one. I don't. It doesn't scream to me like, oh, Solanke, he's really not the finisher we thought he was going to be.
I think they should keep him. No,
I think the issue. I think what we've ultimately come down to is Ange Postecoglou has been the flop.
So I know we want to move on from this, but do you remember against Spurs where he scored a good goal against Chelsea? Against Chelsea, he scored
the one at Spurs, yeah.
Yeah. And I thought that's exactly why they bought him.
Yeah.
Nipping ahead of the last defender.
Yeah.
What a guy. There's just not been that many opportunities or moments for him to do that this year.
No, I would agree. But if you're looking at the signing right now, that's kind of, I think that is floppish. But I think overall, from a bird's eye view, it's all down to Ange, who I would be very shocked if he's maybe even still manager when this video goes out, because I don't see them beating Frankfurt. Okay, final one then, guys. Let's talk a little bit about Philip Foden of Manchester City fame, because his name was suggested a bunch. So I feel like we have to talk about him a little bit. Phil Foden at Man City. Man City obviously dropping off massively. Phil Foden being a big part of that. Player of the season last year for the Premier League.
Was it last season?
Last season he was player of the season. And now he's dropped off massively this year. People also suggested Cole Palmer for his kind of like 2025 form as well. But I think maybe Phil Foden's the one that's worth talking about, because is it as simple as just saying he's been a flop this year? Like this year he's been a flop?
I think he is. I think he's been a big flop because it's not as if he's been injured loads.
But what's it down to then?
What minutes has he got this year?
I love that Ash has just become data man.
Let me have a look.
You're just data man now.
I don't mind.
But look, this season is it because Phil Foden is reliant on Man City's system and the players around him performing really well?
Yeah. Go on, Ash.
Say the question again.
So is Phil Foden reliant on the players around him and Man City's system working really well for him to work really well? Like, obviously, any player that is in that position, yes. But is it even more so for someone like Phil Foden? Because if you are the player of the season, surely you are somebody who can do something out of nothing. You can make something work for your team this year. And I feel like, honestly, that I don't know if we've ever seen him do that for a single 3-game run so far this campaign.
Yeah, I think another way of spinning the question, like, is it his fault or is someone gone running the team? I think it is his fault, unfortunately. And I don't think that's something to taint his career with, you know? I mean, some players just don't have a good season every now and then, unless you're Messi and Ronaldo. That's just like how it works, and that's okay. But this season, a flop. Across his entire career, not. But it is worrying considering the fact that, you know, Foden was always seen as this player that, you know, not the same as Kevin De Bruyne at all. Like, well, yeah,
slightly. But he would like take over.
Not the same,
from,
but he would, because I think a lot of the reason why Manchester City system works is because De Bruyne was so brilliant. So you almost need Foden to then kind of, you know, slowly progress as De Bruyne is at the stand. You need Foden to, you know, eventually just eclipse De Bruyne and become that player. And he hasn't this season. But I feel like the thing that a lot of people are forgetting is that Man City don't have Rodri. And I think that is the biggest difference between this season and now, and how much they've missed him this season. Like, he's been out much longer this season than he was last season, right? Yeah. So I think actually it's easy to forget what he does for that team and how much, you know, freedom he actually allows for those players. I can't confess to have watched every single Manchester City game this season, and ultimately Foden hasn't been as good as he was last year. That was an incredible season. But yeah, I almost want to pin it on Rodri not being there, and then that has allowed for a lot of, you know, kind of the attack not looking as good as they were.
Stats would suggest that, right? Even previously, before when Rodri wasn't a part of the City squad, City's points per game and stuff were like dramatically. Like, I think there's always that stat that basically Rodri never lost a game for City, basically. Yeah. So I wonder. It is kind of a question of like, I wonder what happens when Rodri's back. Would you say the same, Henry?
Yeah, but I hate this idea that if Rodri comes back and Foden starts scoring goals again, he was amazing. I think
he's been bad.
I think someone, and it's also for England as well. You see it for England where I hate like bashing Phil Foden, but he's just not in the recent internationals, previous at the Euros as well. I don't think he should have been starting in that final. You can see he really does try sometimes. He really does, but then he overcompensates. He gets the ball and he tries to like do it all himself. Yeah. All of his goals this season for City have been inside the box. Outside the box, it's been a while since we've seen him score a real banger. There is a great player there, and you hear like ex-pros, all of them all love him, and this is why he's not. And even like I've spoken to a lot of Barcelona fans recently, asking them who their favourite English player. They all say Phil Foden because he's got that technical, tidy quality, but. That's all well and good when you're in a team that's winning every single week. You have to be able to step up when your team is suffering. 7 goals this year isn't terrible, but given what he can do, it's not great. And he's just gone missing. He's just gone missing so often, and that's. I'm amazed that Guardiola hasn't got onto him a bit more, in all honesty.
I think what you said there as well is a big thing, right? 7 goals this season is not a lot, but it's for someone that was the player of the season last year. It's huge. It's a significant difference, which is worthy of talking about. So I think I would agree that Phil Foden is a flop for this season. Yeah. Wouldn't shock me though if next year he's pretty good.
No, hopefully he comes back. But it's always like, you know, he's always been this player that's been kind of like protected by everyone else.
I would agree. Good. Yeah.
And then the worry was that take him out of that. How good is he going to be? And the warning signs were almost there from England, weren't they?
Just feels like direct wingers are really back in at the moment. If you look at Gordon, if you look at Barnes in the Premier League, Doku, like even like Jack Grealish. I know people get on at him, but he does. You can see him going at defenders. I don't think Foden has that ability at the moment to really gun it past. And if they go and get Wirtz this summer, which I think they probably will, then I worry again about where Phil Foden
ends up,
fits into this system going forward. Unless they go to like a 3. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Bayern though, doesn't it? Annoyingly, it looks like he's going to end up at Bayern. Well then, guys, there we have it. We went through all your suggestions and said whether we agreed or disagreed. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please make sure, if you haven't already, check the link in the description below, nordvpn.com/Djellab. Click it, helps the channel massively, and you guys at home will be able to watch all the football you want and be protected online. Yes. Ash, thank you so much for joining me, my friend. Where can people at home check you out?
Ash Edwards02 on TikTok. Would be much appreciated. Really appreciate that.
Make sure you check him out. Henry Hill, where can the lovely people at home see you?
Please check out the latest Football Behind Bars, PSG. Went and watched the Champions League game against Villa with a load of PSG fans. It was a lot of fun, and it was a really good edit, I think, this time. So please go watch it.
When's your next one? I want to come down.
We're going to watch Real Betis if they get through the Europa League, which they should do. We're going to see Betis' next game in principle.
Oh,
so
nice.
come watch a game with a load of the Betis fans.
I'll be keen. Guys, thank you so much at home. Really appreciate it. We'll see you guys next week